I've been with the town since 1988, involved with AV and doing audiovisual with the town. And as part of that, we have learned some great strategies and some pitfalls that we've experienced over time with electronics and the changing formats. So I've brought some samples with me, and I'm going to touch on them through the presentation. But just to give you a sense of what we deal with on a daily basis, our collection of DVDs exceeds 10,000 DVDs within our library. Our video collection's a little over 1,000 tapes, and that's made up of mini DVs, VHS, 3/4 inch, and Betacam. So if any of that rings a bell to you, great. If not, I'll try to explain it. And we do have a few pieces of reel-to-reel videotape as well. So with that, what is archiving? And it's a collection of historical documents or records. And with your archive, everyone has an archive. Many people think that they do not have one, but if you look back at your photo albums, each one of them is a snapshot in time of some significant event, travel adventure, or a moment in time. And even if it's a landscape, you may look at it and say, well, it's just a landscape. It may not have so many importance. It may not to you, but to somebody else it could, because that could be a landmark view, and that landmark could indeed have some details that could be used for restoration purposes in the future. So if you're going through medium, the thing to always consider is the fact, who's it benefiting? What's the meaning behind some of these archival pieces? Because it could go beyond you, and it might be nice to share some of those things that we determine that you do not need to keep within your own archive. So, wide archive. Tape medium is very fragile. So VHS tape has not been in manufacturing for in recent time very long, but if we go back, we probably all have a piece of VHS tape sitting in our home, and as the time goes on, this tape becomes more and more brittle. You also have probably audio cassettes, maybe some 8-track, reel-to-reels that are within your collection as well. So we want to look at the aspect of the effect of what is called bit rot. So that happens both in digital and it also happens in analog, because the magnetic filing on these tapes will start having print through, and that filings will start changing and shifting. So just by period of time, video will decay. The tape will decay, and we call that bit rot. On optical storage, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more in detailed, but there's a piece of metal in here. It's layered in between the plastic. And that piece of metal, if it becomes oxidized, will also start losing its data. So just like we lose magnetic tape, we can lose DVDs. So the goal is to preserve the memories for future generations, for family and friends. So personal devices. The good part about them, they're small, they're compact, they're convenient. You have smartphones, you have little point-and-shoot cameras, you carry them around. You may have an iPod or even a tablet. So I'll tell you my little story with tablets. This one's a dead tablet. It had a number of photos that were on it and did not get backed up, and I cannot access it. So I've lost a couple hundred photos on this device. iPod rather. I had this for a while, and unfortunately, a drink got set down on top of it. And it didn't spill. It condensated. And the water broke down through the seam and shorted it out. So everything that was on here has been lost as well. So the good part is they're convenient. You can email them, you can move them around quickly, but the bad side is they're easy to lose, in the fact that the lifetime of this technology is also very limited. We're going to keep seeing it change as we go forward. Viruses, I think that's self-explanatory, and storage failure, I've identified that you can have that at any point with a device. So what should we archive? And this is a big one, because everyone's going to look at their photos and go, where do I begin? Where do I want to start? Or the videotapes, and that could be quite a large collection. And also with video, it's in real time. So if it's a 2-hour tape, it's 2 hours worth of your time to go through it. So items which are rich in personal meaning. That's the only reason I can find for really archiving this for yourselves. But again, it could be shared with someone else. So just a few photos of the family, outings. You know, those are your memories. Those are the things that you want to try to cherish and hang on to. Organization. Where do you begin? So with the various forms of media that you do have, I like to group them. So regardless if it's photographs, audio tapes, videotapes, first thing I really try to do is get them together so the like materials are together. So I got all my videotapes together, I got all my DVDs, I have all my negatives. And then try to find a common denominator. You know, each one of these are a good point to look at. Is it the event? Is it a date, subject matter, or the media type of again? So when you look through them, you really want to try to find what that common denominator is, because this is going to set the precedent when you go into actually digitizing your media and storing it, of how you're going to be able to recall this information. Because just because you scan it, store it, put it away, the only good archive is an archive you can go and retrieve something out of. So handling and care. I think this is probably the most important element to everything we're going to discuss here. And that tape. 65 degrees is the best temperature. Low humidity, about 45%, is the best for the shelf life. As you go through, as I talked about the bit rot and the tape magnetic print through that can happen, how many people have their tapes sitting like this at home? They go like a book. And the reason is that the tape on the spools will sag. So the bottom becomes heavier and the top is lighter. So it'll actually cause it to kind of pyramid out over time. You want to store them like a book, straight up and down. That keeps the tape flat on the spools. And that's for audio tape, data tape, whatever kind of tape format you're using. Stand them up. That will give you the best longevity to them. Optical media discs. It's probably the most common one that we're being exposed to, and we'll discuss today, and it's also one of the most convenient ways of storing materials. And this statement's going to go true for photographs, negatives, and everything. You want to keep everything out of the sun. UV light breaks down the plastic barriers on it, will break down the negatives or tape. Keep it cool, dry environment. Keep it away from large temperature shifts. Do not store any type of media near a heating vent. Keep it somewhere out away from that, or a cold wall where it can get frequent temperature shifts. The protective cases, I'm sure everyone has their media in a protective case at home, right? And holding the discs, we hold them on the outer edges, or we use the circle in the middle to hold them. We want to prevent getting fingerprints on them. And avoid flexing. Has anybody seen a disc, what happens to them when they flex, if they shatter? The foil inside will actually come apart. It's kind of looks like a spider web that will occur at times. And the pressure in the center, if you go and pull them out, your home movies and other memories, if you're using a case like this or some other type of jewel case, they have those little hubs. And in some cases, it's really hard to get in there to get them out. The way these are designed, you're supposed to put your thumb in there, push that inner lock down so you can then release it. So don't try to pop them out. Use your that inner hub to release first. And then, of course, on the surface, if we slide them, we scratch them, so we pick them straight up. Print. So everyone has photographs that are in print form. And if they are sensitive, older materials, and I don't have all the specifics on it, but I do have some materials with me that you can help yourself to, of how to handle these a little bit more in detail, because the different types of paper have different requirements. From the acids and the oils in your fingers, you don't want to get it on there. It could leach into the paper. So gloves are a good idea if you're handling some older photos. Clean work area, it's kind of a common sense. Keep food and drink away as you're going through them. I'm sure everyone at some point, I don't have one here, but is written on the back of them. It's really a convenient way of doing it, but it can leach into the paper. Paper clips, other fasteners, rubber bands. I've seen people have stacks of them, just rubber band together. I've seen duct tape around them even. Not a great idea. Storage of photography, photographs, negatives, and transparencies. This goes hand in hand from what we were just talking about. The relatively humidity, 30 to 40, it's a little bit lower than video. But if you're shooting around the 40% mark, you're in a good storage environment for them. Keep them cool, clean, stable environment. Avoid the attics, basements, those hot and cold, moist areas. Minimal exposure to all kinds of light. The problem with the photographs is that those dyes are not UV protected unless you're using an inkjet printer that does have UV protected dyes that actually become a pigment that goes into the paper. So if you're even bringing it out in light like this, over long periods of time, if you look on your walls, you probably have some photographs that have faded and the colors have shifted on them just due to the natural light. Protective enclosure, boxes, yes, I don't have any with me, but I'm sure some of you may have seen these or are using them. These are a great way of storing your photos because you can group them together, you can label the box, and then you have them categorized. Motion picture film. So this is your 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter, Super 8, 35 millimeter films. Playback equipment clean. We want to make sure that's always in top of the line before you put something back on. If it hasn't been running a long time, if you have leader on the tape, some spare leader, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, it's the first part. If you have some spare leader around, I would recommend running some leader through. Get about 25, 30 foot of it, run it through first. Make sure the sprockets and everything are going to line up and that you don't have any physical damage that's going to occur to that negative when you do go to run the actual film through. Wound securely, not loose, not tight. You want to hold it on the edges when you wind it up. Keep it on the spool. Okay, so it's not that you probably have this, but you could run into it. Nitrate film. And I'm not sure if anyone's seen it, but you may have heard it referred to as gun cotton. And this is nitrate film. So the problem with the nitrate film is temperatures 100 degrees itself, it'll just ignite. So this stuff burns really good and you cannot extinguish it once it gets going. So if you do have it, I have sheets with me as far as how to handle this. And the way you can tell is on the sprocket side, it's going to have the word safe written in it. If it has safe, it's not nitrate. If it does not have safe, and it's older and it could have crystals on it, could look white, it could look amberish color, then you most likely have a chance that you have nitrate film. And the best thing to do is keep it ventilated and then get it in a cold place such as the freezer. Get it cooled down. Yep?
Is that motion picture films or should I still with negatives be using that?
Primarily motion picture film. I don't believe in any time that there was any 35 millimeter used. And in the era when they were using this, it was still wet plate going in large format. So isolate from the other part of your collection if you do come across it, because the off gases also can damage other film. So now that we are starting to get our stuff together and we got materials, you've sorted it out, you've already gone through and you've figured out what it is that you want to keep as part of your archive and what you want to pass on, now it comes into digitizing. So what are we going to do with all this analog technology? So photographs, the primary way of doing photographs is going to be scanning. You got various types of tools for scanning, but ultimately there is only one means of doing that. Anything that is a tape-based or an analog-based, it could even be digital tape, is that we're going to have to digitize it through the use of a computer or some other third-party device to make that happen so we can then share it. Scanning our images. The equipment needed is a flatbed scanner, dust-free environment, and of course a computer for it. In regards to this, that's a flatbed scanner. If you have one of those, that doesn't count. This works well. The one on the right works well for negatives because it does have that little tray that the negatives and slides will park in and it can get backlit. The reason why these don't work well for photographs is a lot of them are a front load type scanner where you put the image in, you hold it up, or it just kind of slides through, or you may have one of those wands. And the problem with those is that you're going to get movement, and that image is not going to lay flat. And what you really want to do is get it flat, so that way you can get a scan that goes from left to right, top to bottom, that doesn't have any keystoning or shadows happening on it. So to prepare the scanner, the cleanliest and clearest scan you can get is going to be based on getting the dirt and stuff off your images and also off the glass. There's nothing worse than running a whole bunch of images through your flatbed scanner and you get a couple hundred done, and all of a sudden you realize you got a fingerprint that's showing up in the same spot on all those photos because it was on the glass. So when you go to pick it up, gloves are handy. I even like to use a toothpick just to kind of pluck them. It's something soft and it won't get dirt on the glass as you're doing that. Scanner settings. How many dots per inch? That's how many of the shading and colored within 1 inch. So, you know, your dots per inch, typically with scanning, we're going to run around 300 DPI for 90% of all your images. If you're going to go bigger, 600 is probably the limit. You don't need to go over 600 DPI with them. You may have come across PPI, and that's pixels per inch, and they're interchanged within the manuals and instructions when you're looking up specs. Scan and save, we'll kind of just cover that. JPEGs are pretty common. You can do TIFFs, bitmaps, PNGs, all different type of format files. JPEG is universal for the most part. You're going to be able to get that image is a good quality image by keeping the quality setting on the JPEG up on the high end. So that is a good way of going. And a helpful tip in here, if you're doing multiple scans, and multiple scans can become an advantage for you. When you first scan it, you might want to scan it as a small thumbnail, so it's quick to share. You can make 3x5s with a smaller sized image, but at the same time, scan now it as a larger file, so that way you can go and do 8x10s or something bigger.
Wait a minute, you got the picture on the scanner, and it's going to print out?
No. So the question is, if we have the photo on the scanner, will it print out? And the answer is no. We first need to scan it and put it into the computer. So this is going to take light, and it's going to digitize that image. That image now becomes data. That data is now located on your computer or other device. Once you have it there, you can...
How do you get it there?
How do you get it there?
Yeah.
You need to use this.
I know.
This is connected to your computer.
Yeah, but where do I find it on the computer once it scans?
We can cover that later. I can go over that later with you.
I'm a real dummy on this, I'll admit.
Not a problem. So the aspect is you have a directory that you will dedicate. You'll indicate where you want images to go. And I will cover a little bit of that as we go forward. So here's getting into that. Organizing the images that you have just scanned. One of the problems that we have at the cable station is that we have thousands of pieces of media. We have thousands of images that are stored, and how can we recall it? And I don't get into this here, but something to look up is metadata. It's an element that could help you with organization and being able to recall your images. But a simple naming format for your images to use year, month, and day, a brief description, and then have it do an extension to how many files. So just keep going from 1, 2, 3, 4. That at least gives you the bare bones information when you want to go back and recall something. So when you go to open up a directory, you can quickly tell if that directory, Smith wedding, we got the rehearsals, we got the ceremonies, but we can sort this information now by date and be able to find that relatively quickly. So when you're scanning, you can name your files. If this is your digital camera, when you're importing them, this is also another area that you want to do that. So if it's going to be digital video, digital photographs, or scanned images, it's a good practice. So transferring. Video and audio to your computer. The procedure for archiving digital videos is the same as for any other content. Locate the files, gather them into a single folder, back up the collection, and migrate the collection approximately every 5 years. And as I was telling you in the beginning about bit rot, one of the problems that we do have with this type of medium is that the technology is going to continue to change. And just because you have a CD, the CD could be from 5, 10 years ago, but your CD drive in your computer, as you get new computers, are also changing. So the way these read and write keeps changing. The data that we store from a JPEG or other said image, video file, the codecs around these are going to continue to change also. So today it might be JPEG. We're also using RAW, TIFFs, and as we go down the road 5, 10 years from now, the problem that you're going to run into is that each element has to be upgraded. So whatever the new format's being used in standards for printing purposes, you need to migrate your entire collection over time. So the larger the collection, the harder the work. DVDs. The reason why we want to back up DVDs. Yes?
Think of the archival quality CDs.
We'll get into that. We'll cover that. DVDs, the reason why I want to back them up again is they do rot. And you may think of your movies, but the problem with the movies are that those are press discs, and I'm not too worried about that because it's not part of your unique collection. But this is a portable device that will burn DVDs in real time. And when you burn your disc, that could be the transfer off of your VHS tape, or could have the audio files from an audio tape. It could be a digital videotape that you've now archived because we want to protect the tape from rotting. But now you have it electronically. What we want to do is go into this disc, and there's a video TS folder inside of them. We're going to take that video TS folder, and we're going to go inside of it, and there's a VOB files that you will find. The VOB stands for the video object. So the best way to detect which files are video and which ones are just kind of for the menus is that the larger files are the video files. The other ones are just a couple kilobytes, megabytes, really tiny. My note on that is just copy the video TS file and just keep it. Just take the whole folder, because that would allow you to burn a new disk and have all the menus and settings right back to it. The archives.org and the booklet that we were working off of for this presentation recommended just pulling the VOBs, but I would just tell you, take the video TS and go with it. VTS?
VTS, is that the whole package then?
It's a parent folder. So when you go in, you'll have an audio TS? Yeah, sometimes you'll find an audio TS folder inside there as well. Ignore it. You just want to look for the video TS file. Once you have that, you can copy that to your hard drive. You can store it, or you can burn a new DVD with it. So videotape, it's brittle. We've established that. So there are several methods for digitizing video. We can record from a VCR to a digital camera. Some of the new cameras will allow you to take, where is it? Here it is. Some of these new cameras will allow you to actually put video back into them. And the nice thing is, with the digital cameras, you can put it into their hard drive, into their memory card, and then take that piece of medium and transfer it back into your computer. So you can use that as your digitizing or encoder. So you don't need any special equipment for your computer. Using a digital converter from a VCR to a computer. I do not have one with me, but basically it is a small USB device. You can buy them for under 50 bucks. It plugs into the USB port of your computer and it has a 2 audio, left, right, and a video connection. You connect that to your VCR, and then following the software's instructions, you'll be able to record the video coming in. VCR DVD Combo Units, I do not have one here, but I did show you the portable DVD burner that I do have, and that's connected to a VCR there, and I can show you afterwards a little bit more how those work. So VCR to a digital video camera, kind of explained it, but here's a diagram. We'll Coming off the back of your VCR, you're going to connect it to the camera's inputs, and then you're going to turn on the record function of the camera, and then turn on the play function of your VCR and record it. This is a cool little thing that's come up with newer cameras, the pass-through function. If your camera will pass through video, what you'll be able to do with the pass-through is connect the VCR up just as we had done, but also connect the camera to the computer at the same time. So the video can go right to the hard drives within the computer. So that saves you a step of transferring it at a later time. Digital converters. Again, I don't have one here, but it plays the same way. It goes into the same function as the pass-through of the video camera would. So here is one of those converters. So we're going to come out of the VCR, go into the converter, and that's a USB plug going in, 2.0. If you do find one, if your computer is compatible for 3.0 and you can find one that's 3.0, get the 3.0. It's much faster. It's going to allow you to deal with the HD videos in the future. So it's a good step forward. That's a VCR DVD Combo Unit. So on the left-hand side is the VCR deck, and of course on the right-hand side is the DVD deck. That allows you to put the disc in on one side and the tape in on the opposite, play the tape, record to disc. And of course a portable DVD burner, and that's what I have over here. And the nice thing with this one is you can actually take and put USB sticks into it. So if you're pulling it out of your camera, you can take and put it directly in, and you can record the video off those memory sticks directly back to disk as either data or video. So a helpful hint, save the highest quality version of your videos when at all possible. Everything with video is in megabits. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to say VHS tape, I wouldn't go anything more than 3 megabits per second. If I'm doing S video, I might go 3.5 megabits per second. If I'm getting up into beta or DV cam, mini DV, you might want to bump it up to 5 megabits per second. If you're getting into HD video, off of HD videotape, I don't think there's too many cameras out there that were involved with HD, but Canon did have some out for a period of time, and Sony did on the prosumer line. Those there, you want to be recording at 15 megabits per second to be able to withhold the data for the future in quality. Let me back up. Time code, hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. When you're doing this, a great process is to get a cut sheet and then be able to write down just kind of what you're seeing on the screen and note the time code of the recorded side, not the playing file, but where you're recording it. So that you want to mark down the hour, minute, second. If you really want to get detailed, you can get in the frames, but that will help you to recall things if you have multiple events and activities on that tape that are ending up on that disc or as a digitized file. That allows you to go back and say, okay, I need to advance out to 30 minutes or 45 minutes to find that information. Audio tapes, I didn't get into too much of it, but the process is identical. I do have a duping station with me, so you're going to do the exact same thing that you do for video, except that you're just going to be moving the audio side of that information. Storage media. Digital storage medias have a short life. This is why digital preservation requires active management, including regular migration of content from older storage devices to newer devices. So, everyone knows what optical is. We've talked about that. We've talked about the different types of cameras and things we use, but there's all sorts of different format cards in there. It's nothing worse than having an SD card fail on you or a compact flash card fail after you've taken your photos. So these are designed for 10,000 insertions. The pins are what usually fails first. So if you look at the back of your SD cards, look at the pins. If you see anything, you can pass this around. If you see them that they're not in alignment, they seem like they're shifting, it might be time for a new SD card and stop using that one. You don't want to damage your camera at the same time. You don't want to take and use it, record things, and find the fact that you can't read it later. Other forms of media up there is hard drives, and there's different types of hard drives. So this is just one. We have portable hard drives that are sealed in cases. These are nice to have for storage of material. You can take this off and then put it into a fire safe. And if you do use a fire safe, it should be a media rated fire safe, because fire safes are rated on paper, not on media. You don't want these to melt down in there. This one is one I prefer. This is a box. It's an external box that you hook up to your computer through either USB or eSATA, but you can put your own hard drive in it. The reason why I like them is I can pop out the hard drives, put them back in packaging, and then put them in a safe. Or I can take them and put them in a safety deposit box. Drives, when you're buying drives, don't buy the cheap ones. The green drives, blue drives out there. I prefer the blacks. These are server rated. So if you're going to get a drive, get a high quality drive, especially if you're going to store information on it for extended periods of time. The biggest failure points for hard drives is when computer boots up and they come up to speed, or you shut it down. So if you turn your computer on and off frequently, the reliability of that hard drive keeps going down. You have more potential for failure. The last set of items up there is LTO tape, data tape. It's not something that you would probably use. Some of you may have had some exposure to this, but LTO tape allows for high data storage capacity. So this tape here, in a compressed data format, holds 1.6 terabytes, and in a raw form, being video, because video is already compressed, so it's a 1-to-1 compression ratio, but we can get 800 gig on here. So, and these run about $30. So from the cost point in the data storage, they are a good tool for high density storage. Optical is primarily what you're going to be utilizing for the most part on a day-to-day basis. So optical discs, storage medium for which data is read and which is written by lasers. I'm not going to go through all these, but first generation, this goes back many years, and the laser discs are back in the 70s. Were first coming out in the 70s, so the use of a disc has been around for a number of years. Second generation, we see the changing with the DVD audio discs, the Ultras. Third generation, Blu-rays. I do have Blu-rays with me. I can pass these around for you. I have two with me. One disc holds 25 gig, and the neat thing to do is look at the back of them. This one's got kind of a gold surface to it, so this is actually an archival. And this one's a 50 gig density, and it gets really dark. So I'll pass those two around.
Write your own Blu-rays? Can you buy a Blu-ray?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, you can. Blu-ray burners. When you buy a burner for your computer, it's good to do a little research on it and also buy a quality burner, because this is where the rubber meets the road, if you will, as far as these discs are concerned. There's a gold. If you look on the band, you can see the gold ring. All of the discs that we utilize in our facility, we use inkjet printers, so they all have a white surface on them. But that's a gold disc. And then we have a dual layer DVD. This is 8.5 gig, and there's dual layers to that. And we'll touch it. It's 1,000 megabytes.
Some of us don't know very much about it.
Okay, 1,000 megabytes equals a gig. 1,000 gig equals a terabyte. 1,000 terabyte equals a petabyte. Petabyte? Petabyte.
Terabytes.
A byte is it one?
8 bits.
8 bits. Yeah. It's just numbers.
A bit is a 1 or a 0. And 8 of those make a byte.
You got it. Fourth generation discs. This is really cool because they're tapping into a terabyte on a disk, as well as some of these discs now, because the data rates for HD is being limited to 15 megabits per second due to your DVD players and the ability of your computer's drive to only spin at a certain RPM. So in order for them to get the faster bit rate speeds, read-write speeds, is to get those drive speeds up. But the disks can actually shatter and come apart. So they're actually working on disks that are kind of flexible. They're more flexible, rubberized. But high density is really the next frontier for it. One additional point on these, and this kind of goes back to SD cards as well. The more information you put on one disk, if the disk is to fail, the more information you lose. So keep that in mind as you go and choose what product that you're going to utilize. What vulnerability do you want? Do you want to have a little bit larger collection, but have the opportunity for, if you have a loss, you lose less information? Or do you want to condense it as much as possible down to one piece of medium? And if this was to fail, I lose 1.6 terabytes of information just because this tape fails. So comparisons of the optical storage medium. On the left, CD, and you can see it's a dash and a dot. And then when we get into DVDs, the layer burns not quite as deep, and the dashes and dots get a little bit closer together. HD DVD, dots and dashes are closer together yet, and the Blu-rays, they're closer together. So you can see what's happening is the color of the laser is changed from infrareds down to the blues, and what's happening is those laser beams are also getting much tinier, so that allows them to write in a finer pattern and get more dashes and dots. And that's all it is. It's more, if you would, it's like Morse code. So that's all your bytes. Long dashes and dots to put the data in.
And that will play on any machine?
No. No. With a Blu-ray disc, that will play only in a computer that has a Blu-ray drive. And this is where the forward migration always has to happen. So as you convert your data, your images, or your videos, as you go forward, as technology changes, before the technology is so outdated that you can no longer read that material, you need to transfer it. It's a never-ending process. What kind of storage medium should we use? The best to look for is a gold, silver DVD that's going around. So to your point about golds, everything we do within our facility is archived on a gold. The cost point of a gold is running about $2.50 a disc. So it's not an inexpensive route when you look at a large capacity.
Dave, with the golds, and I mean, there's different colors because you can get CDs and DVDs that are blue, that
Yep.
are, other colors.
Yes.
So why would what's the difference between the two, and why would you use the gold versus?
Right. Okay. So if we back up and look at the, let's back up for a second. Okay, this slide here. So there's a piece of metal, as I talked about earlier. There's a piece of foil in there. That's a gold foil compared to other types of materials they use. And I don't have it with me right now, but I can get you the information if anybody's interested. There's different types of dyes that are being utilized. And there is a dye that you really want to use, and there's a dye you don't want to use. Afterwards, I can look that up for you and tell you specifically. Not unless, do you know what it is off the top of your head? Yeah, but there's two different types of dyes that they use inside of them, and it's preferred that you use a gold or silver disc with this one element of dye, and the reason for it is it holds up the longest. So, and it's resisting DVD rot. Yep.
When you go to buy them in a store, do you have any with the packaging? I see DVD, R DVD, RW DVD, R plus DVD, and then all these different designations. Is that related to the color you're talking about?
It would say archival. Most of them you at least look for an archival disc, and then those archivals should be a gold disc. We buy everything that we use in our facility bulk, so I do not have anything that's packaged with me. If you buy them in bulk, you can get a better price, and if you want to see me afterwards, I can tell you a couple vendors.
10 archival quality gold discs online for about $1.70 a piece.
Yeah.
So,
Just depends on the vendor. I don't want to promote anyone over the other at this point, but I can talk to you more afterwards.
So which is better to use, an external drive or a disk?
Combination. Because ultimately, as we go forward here, the storage, what you need to do, have at least 2 separate copies. So the idea is that you want to take and put information on a disk, information on a hard drive. And at least with these 2 separate mediums, if one medium comes outdated or fails, you have it backed up somewhere else. The other element to hard drives and high density data storage from a tape is when it comes time that you have to migrate everything from, let's just use the example of MPEG-2 video, and we now need to move it to a QuickTime video file, because that's now the new element and MPEG-2 is disappearing. With this, we can load it back to a hard drive on our primary computer very quickly, and we can run that batch process, and we can put it back out to another format very quickly. If you're using some type of optical drive, you have to load each one of these, transfer the files off, make the render, and then load them back.
So you go from there to the computer to the...
Back. So you go back and forth. The computer becomes the middle ground. Different kinds of media, DVDs, CDs, portable hard drives, thumb drives, internet storage. I didn't talk a lot about internet, but cloud services. When you talk about your mobile devices, many of you can have these logged directly into, I believe it's iCloud with Apple products, and with Amazon, or excuse me, Amazon is one vendor, and there's other, Google for Android devices. But you can get your images to sync automatically. So what happens with at least my mobile device here is that once I walk into a Wi-Fi area, it recognizes Wi-Fi at home and it says, okay, now I got the charge port in. I have power, and I'm in Wi-Fi, so I'm not going to burn up my data plan. And now what it'll do is it automatically backs up to the cloud. So if I have a situation of one of these failing again, at least I'm protected that all my images and video that I've taken that's personal to me have been backed up into a private account. Definitely a good practice, as Kathy explained with her daughter's phone going into the bottom of the lake. Okay, storage, what you need to do with it. Store media copies in different locations as physically far apart as possible. So one of the things I like to look at is if you're at home, fire safes are a great idea, media rated. Get 2 of them, put them on opposite ends of the house if you're going to keep it at home. If you are looking for an external place, safety deposit box, if you get a size that you can put one of these in, or be able to put a hard drive in, you can put a lot of storage off-site and out of the way and have the confidence that you do have a backup. Friends and family, this is a great one. Just burn a couple extra copies and ask a family member to store it at their home. They probably have a digital archive of some sort, just have them add it to it. Great thing to do for DVDs, color code. So if you're going to partner up with other people, you can put all yours in red. Somebody else can have theirs in blue, so quickly you can find within your libraries. These are all Jim's, these are all Tom's files, so that way you can share them. Labeling media properly. How many people use Sharpies? Throw them out. Your DVDs are at a higher rate of failure because the chemicals that are inside of this actually can break down through the plastics and start pitting the foil. Once that hole occurs inside the plastic, you now have an opportunity for air and moisture to get in to oxidize the disc. We have found it within our facility from DVDs that were done back in the early 90s when we first started with DVDs, that we have a high rate of failures. And Sharpies and heat were the 2 elements that we found that really affected them. So the alternative is a pen that's safe for CDs and DVDs. These are water-based. So You can get them at any office store, any store that sells the medium, you can find it there. Ask them for materials that are safe. I shouldn't say throw Sharpie under the bus, because Sharpie does have markers now that are available for optical media to write with, but you just want to make sure that you're using a pen or a device or a marker rather that's suitable for it. So ballpoint pens, if you're writing with them, the pressure can actually transfer down. You're welcome to try it on the one I have up here, because you can actually see the back end of your handwriting on the other side. Pencils, same problem. Crayons, why? And I've talked about the markers. Just one last point I wanted to make with the aspect of your discs. There's one other option when you look at discs. If you are, I'll pass these around. If you're going to use any type of printers on them, this one, you'll feel it feels like terracotta. And this is a inkable surface for an inkjet printer. And the other one is smooth. So the smooth one is what we call a water shield, and this one is not. And I got some water. So the advantage is, if you're labeling stuff, if you're using a non-water shield and they get wet for some reason, the information runs. But if you use a water shield, they're still there. So the advantage is if for some reason your collection gets wet.
Is that the kind of pen was used or the kind of disc?
It's the disk surface. It's the actual disk surface. And the other element to storage, I like paper. If the item gets wet, this you can get it wet and you can get it off. There's no glue to it, it's just a flap. The comparisons is that there are some that have a vinyl material on it. And the vinyl, what happens over time is it will stick. And if you ever had one of those CD cases in your car where the discs went in, and it was in a warm car and the silk screen got warm enough, and all of a sudden you went to get it out and you couldn't get it out because it's basically glued inside of it. So, and that's on commercial discs. Jewel cases, there are thin ones, there are thicker ones. You probably each have seen that. Software comes in these. Thinner ones obviously take up less space. What I don't like about them is you hit the floor with them once and they break. Album cases are great. They just take up a lot of space. These are really durable. You can put information on what they are on them. They're well protected. They just take up a lot of space. So if you have a high density library, this is probably not a way you want to go.
Well, you mean you put your disc in those paper ones as opposed to one of those?
Yep. So what we would do for storage, we take our paper envelope, open the flap, tape the disc, slide it in, and it is the thinnest storage medium you can have. If you have a recipe card box or you go back to the photo archive boxes, you can stack multiple discs inside. The other element, you don't stack discs flat in stacks because the data can be affected due to the pressure. So the one on the bottom gets the most pressure. And if you take a spindle of discs, you can find that there's some weight to them. So you want to put them in a box, you want to keep them vertical. Questions? Yeah.
What if some of those like computers, offices, or in our office, whatever, they keep them like one on top of that, maybe 50, 60, 70 of them. So
As long as they're separated?
yeah, I mean, in one spindle, you got about 50 or 60 of them, one on top of each other.
Right. When you write the disk, when you get done writing information to the disk, the first thing you want to do with it is verify it. So as part of the burning process, you'll have the burn, which is really quick. The aspect of going back and reading the disk lengthens the time. So when you go through to verify data, it's going to verify the original content of information that you asked to go to the disk to be burned. It's going to verify that all that's there. As that process goes on, if it finds an error, it'll notify you, so that way you can take that disk, recycle it, put a new disk in, and repeat the process. So if you do have a disk that's been at the bottom of the spindle of a brand new pack and has some vulnerabilities to it, ideally that should be a flat effect. When we go back and look at what the dots and dashes are, When we burn that information in, now you have data. You put weight on it, you're now pressing that back out over time. So what ends up happening is you can actually cause the data to have errors at that point. So now that you have errors, you've lost that data. So keeping them vertical prevents that. Yeah.
You just mentioned recycling, which brought up my question. We've got a lot of old tapes or things you've converted to DVD,
Yeah.
reels, big tapes. What's the best way to get rid of them?
Eco Park.
What's that?
Monroe County, Eco Park. All right, a plug for Eco Park. Eco Park is located right by the airport, behind the airport. It is an old waste management transfer site, and it's run by the county. They have a wealth of recycling opportunities, and you can find that at the Penfield's website, penfield.org. We have a link to Eco Park there, or if you go to Monroe County's website, you can also find a link there to get their website. They also have an opportunity on that site, what they call a prospector, that allows you to take any type of materials that you may have, type it in, and it will find a vendor in your area. So if there's somebody closer by here out in this area that will do DVDs or VHS tapes, and they are registered, you'll be able to find it so you don't have to drive out to Eco Park. But Eco Park has hours, they're open, and everything, for the most part, is free, except for like tires and I think anything with Freon, there's a small fee. But they also take packaging styrofoam. So if you're into it, you can take it all out there.
Take sneakers too.
They do. It's a great place. It's a drive-in too, so you don't have to get out of your car. They'll take it out for you. It's a big drive-through loop.
We just had the recycling day last Saturday. Yeah, the Eco Park, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Recycling day last Saturday.
Yeah, there's not a big demand for this type of material, but there's a big waste volume going out. You know, if you have onesie-twosies, if you want to just give us a call, because we do make frequent trips out there with it. I mean, if somebody came in with a small box, we would definitely be happy to, you know, take that off your hands. One side note for what we do at the town, part of our collection is indeed movie reels. If you do have movie reels or slides, photographs, or anything about the historic element of the community, we definitely have interest. Kathy has interest as well in working with you and being able to help you with the digitizing of it. As a return, we get to keep a copy of it for our archives, so we can slowly fill in some of those blanks. So if you're cleaning out attics, basements, and you come across something that is of the area of the town, we definitely would like to work with you.